Hi everybody, welcome back to another Sewcialites 3 video. Today we're going to make block number 9. Block 9 is called the Daylight Block. It's designed by Corey Yoder of Coriander Quilts. This is a beginner level block. This one is nice and easy, great beginner block to sew with. I'm going to show you how to make the block and how to have some bonus half square triangles at the end and what you can do with those. I'm making both the 6-inch and the 9-inch blocks. I'm going to sew the 9-inch block on camera. My 6-inch block is already done. I'll show that to you at the end. One of the things about this block is you'll notice all the colors. You don't have to use that many colors if you don't want to. If you want, you can make this a 2-color block, 3-color block, 4-color block. You can make the center square the same color as your background and then have all of these little kind of house shape looking parts as another color. What I did is I made my 6-inch block very similar to this colorway, and for the 9-inch block I've got a little bit of a change. My 9-inch blocks I'm sewing with Little Sweetheart and Cloud 9. Those fabric lines are by Laundry Basket Quilts, so I've got reds, pinks, tans, and creams, and that's about it. Rather than having 4 different colors here, I went with 2 red, 2 pink. I picked a nice big floral print for the center, and then on the outside I picked this print. This is what they would call a low volume print, if you've ever heard of that. Not a lot of color going on. From a distance it almost reads as a solid. Those are my corner squares, and then those are also going to be the color that I use to make the half square triangles. The first thing the instructions have you do is draw a line on the back of the fabric ace squares. I'm going to be using the diagonal seam tape. It's already on my featherweight. I've showed you that before, so we're going to head right over to the machine. I'm sewing on a 1955 Singer 221 featherweight. I have the extension bed on the machine. I showed this last time. I've showed diagonal seam tape before, and I've got my pieces right over here. I'm going to sew these without pinning, which means it's probably going to come out a little bit wonky, but I'm doing that on purpose. I'm going to show you what you can do if the 9 patch part comes out a little bit crooked, because the way this block is constructed, using these corner pieces gives us a great opportunity to straighten the block out. We're going to get started by sewing our 9 patch. If you're a new quilter, this is called a 9 patch. You've got 3, 6, 9. I have it next to me on the machine. All I'm going to do is sew these together, these together, these together, and then I'll sew the other side, those and those and those. So you'll see me sew a bunch of the squares together, simple straight line, 1/4 inch seam allowance stitching, and I have my guide foot on my machine. Let's look at all of our pieces. We've got the top row, our middle row, and the bottom row. I'm going to press these to the dark. Top row, I'm going to press in toward the polka dot. Middle row, out toward the polka dot. And bottom row, in toward the polka dot. And then we can sew our rows together. I have all my rows pressed. When you look at the pattern, they do not give a measurement for each row. This is a pretty straightforward block. It just tells you, sew it together, assemble your unit, and measure it at the end. I'm going to go ahead and pin. I decided to pin both rows at the same time. Here's what that looks like. Both rows are pinned on. I can sew one side and then flip it around and sew the other side and then do my pressing. And then we're going to have a look at this part of the block. We do want to measure that before we add on the corner squares. Here's my 9 patch. I'm going to go ahead and measure 9.5, 9.5. Pretty good. It's a little on the wonky side. Rather than trim, I thought I would show you something else you can do, especially if the block is coming up short. This line here, I'm going to put it right on my mat. You can see how it kind of matches. The line on the cutting mat here is sort of dips down here and then kind of comes back up over here. So that's not completely straight. The next thing we're going to do is the corner squares. I want to take this right sides together. So right side down, line it up with the straight side. And then as I'm coming up toward the top, I want to make sure I keep it straight. Straight here and straight here. If I turn this over, you see that? Here's the bottom fabric right there peeking out because the block is a little bit crooked. So it lines up here, and this piece right here is a little bit short. So you can see a bit of that corner square fabric. That's fine. That's actually what you want. when you're lining these up, if your block underneath is crooked, rather than trying to line it up with the crooked parts, you can actually, even if you want, you can pull it a little bit past, because what's going to happen is you're going to sew corner to corner. So these are pulled a little bit past, and then you'll sew, and then you'll flip and press, and it'll be a little bit beyond where it needs to be. But we're doing all 4 corners. What's going to happen is you'll get a block that's slightly oversized and you can trim it down. I'm going to put a pin here and a pin here, and then I'm going to do the opposite corner. You can only do 2 at a time because they're going to overlap. Now we're ready to go to the machine and sew corner to corner and corner to corner. I've switched out to the foot with no guides, so my regular foot, we're going to sew corner to corner. We've sewn corner to corner. I'm going to leave the outside pins in. You'll see why in just a moment. I'm going to check these by folding it up, making sure it looks good. Looks good. It's nice and even here. It's a little bit past here. I believe that was the one that was short, so that's how it's supposed to be. So when I work on the next corners, I'm going to get a nice straight line all the way around. Let's look at this side. I'm a little bit short here, but not enough for me to go seam rip it. Now what we're going to do is trim a 1/4 inch away from the line here. Keep that pin in. You'll see why in just a moment. Set that aside and trim this one. Now I would only probably do this with the 6 inch and the 9 inch. If you're doing the 3 inch, this is going to be really small. It's going to be scrap. We're going to make some bonus half square triangles at the end. These are nice and pinned. I'm going to set these aside. You want to go to the iron and you're going to press these out. They naturally fold that direction. That's all pressed. Now we're going to line up our next squares. Lined up right here along this line, straight, straight, straight. We've got a little dip here, and then as we get here, it comes up more toward the line. So you can account for that, lining it up with this piece here, not the piece here that's short. Nice and straight, 2 pins again. I have this all pinned. This side was nice and straight. I didn't need to make adjustments. Let's go sew corner to corner and corner to corner. I'm going to do the same thing. Pull out those inside pins, flip it and have a look. That side looks really good. That side looks really good. I'm going to trim these. Save these. I'm going to press this out. We'll measure the block. Here's my block. I want to measure it, and there's something you want to look at before you do any trimming. Remember, this is going to go in a quilt. I'm actually slightly over the 9.5. One thing I want to look for, and I'm not going to use this ruler because this is all in 1/2 inch increments. I want to get a ruler that's got a 1/4 inch mark on it. Before I trim, what I'm going to look at is right here. Remember, we're going to be sewing this into a quilt. I need 1/4 inch. So before I put the ruler down and cut this to straighten it, I want to measure. So if I did that and cut off this extra to straighten it, I'm going to lose my point when I go to put that in the quilt. When I line up the 1/4 inch, it lines up with this piece right here. So I don't want to trim this side. I can mark this side as short. It's pretty obvious. You'll see that when you go to put that in your quilt. Let's turn to this side. Same thing. If I line up right here, I've got my 1/4 inch. It's a little short right here. Tiniest bit short there. We'll go ahead and leave that. Let's look for the point. Wow, that's really tight. If I want to keep the point when I put this in, I've got 1/8 inch seam allowance. That's interesting. Last side. My 6 inch, I was actually able to trim and even out. For this block, even though it's a little bit oversized, I'm not going to trim anything. I want to make sure when I go to put this in my quilt that I'm going to keep my points. I'm not worried about it. I'm going to leave this one just as it is. What we're going to do now, we're going to go back to the sewing machine and sew all these with a 1/4 inch seam because we're going to get some really unique looking half square triangles. Let's sew all 4 of these. Now that I have these sewn, I'm going to go ahead and pull the pins out, and then we're going to measure. We're going to see what size half square triangle we're going to get. I'm going to use my square up triangle ruler. I can get a 3.5 easily. Let's see if I can get a 4. I can get a 4-inch. I've shown how to use this before, but really quick, I'm looking at the seam line that I just sewed, lining up the 4 on top of that, and then what you do is trim the extra. And then I'll press it, and I'm going to have a 4-inch half square triangle with these fun little corner pieces. Here's all my half square triangles, and in case you're wondering why would you do this, it's just saving fabric, something fun. You don't have to do this. These are the ones that came off the 9-inch block. These are the ones that came off my 6-inch block. See how small they are? They're actually 2.5 inches. I think they look really unique with that little pop of color in the corner. If you're using white as your background, one thing you could do with these is use it for the label on the back of your quilt. You can sew all 4 together, and then you'll have a nice blank space here. You can write on that. I use this Pentel gel roller for fabric sometimes. I use that to make quilt labels, or I use my embroidery machine. But it's got the nice little corner pieces here, makes a nice little frame. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with mine. If you've been watching Fat Quarter Shop for a while, you may remember Kimberly's half square triangle bucket. I don't know how many years ago that was. I thought, hey, that's a great idea. So I started a half square triangle container. This is Lori Holt cookbook. It's a nice little tin. Let's open it up. I don't know how long I've been saving these, but I have a lot of half square triangles in here. This is some Bev McCullough fabric. I think there's some Lori Holt. There's some Bonnie and Camille fabric in here. This is from Spring Chicken when I did the Barnstar sampler quilt. You can see there's all different sizes. Look at all these half square triangles. I have these in a bag. This is the Bonnie and Camille. I kept them together because I have a charm pack somewhere with this fabric, and I think at the time I was thinking I want to keep them separate. Got some Into the Woods. I have some solids. These I made when I was in the Solid of the Month Club with Fat Quarter Shop. I did this to keep from wasting the fabric. Little triangles. Looks like I've got some squares in here. I guess technically they don't count, but there's some squares in here. These purple ones, gosh, I've had these for a long time. They're in the bottom. And there's even a couple Quilt As You Go squares. I made a quilt with a honey bun. I did Quilt As You Go. I held on to these. If you're interested in seeing Quilt As You Go, let me know. Leave me a comment. Maybe that's something I can put on the channel in the future. So for now, the half square triangles I made today are just going to go in here. I'm going to save them for another day. One day I will make something with all of these half square triangles. Probably a really unique looking quilt. Here's the 9-inch block I just sewed with you today. And here is my 6-inch block made with the Strawberry Lemonade fabric line by Sherri and Chelsi, Moda Fabrics. This one I did using a different color for each point of the block, and then I picked one of their really fun white background prints with the colors for the center, solid white as the background. I hope you've enjoyed the Sewcialites 3 block video today. Again, this is block number 9, the Daylight Block by Corey Yoder of Coriander Quilts. Any comments or questions, please leave them below the video. Please like, subscribe, share with your quilty friends, and I'll be back for block number 10 next week. See you next time!